The power goes out at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. You're at work, your kids are at school, your spouse is across town. You pull out your phone instinctively, muscle memory taking over. But the screen stays black. Not dead battery black, something else. You try again. Nothing. Around you, dozens of people are doing the same thing, tapping screens, shaking devices like that's ever fixed anything. Someone says the word you're all thinking, but nobody wants to say out loud. EMP, electromagnetic pulse. Or maybe it's just a massive grid failure. Maybe it's a solar flare. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. The invisible thread connecting you to everyone you love just got cut, and you have absolutely no idea where they are or if they're safe. This is the communication blackout, and it's not a theoretical problem. It's happened in Venezuela, in Puerto Rico after Maria, in parts of Texas during the freeze. And when it happens, most people do exactly the wrong thing in exactly the wrong order, which is why we're going to walk through this step by step, because the difference between reunion and permanent separation often comes down to decisions you make in the first 6 hours. Let's start with what you need to understand about human behavior during communication collapse. When phones die, people don't think. They panic move. They get in their cars and drive toward where they think their family is, creating instant gridlock. They go to the last known location instead of the predetermined rally point they never set up, because they never thought they'd actually need one. They burn through the most valuable resource, time, doing laps around a city that's also melting down. The average person wastes 4 to 6 hours in reactive motion before they start thinking strategically. You don't have 4 to 6 hours. If this is a real grid-down event, the window of relatively safe movement is maybe 12 hours before roads become genuinely dangerous, before fuel runs out, before the reality of the situation turns crowds into mobs. So the first rule, the one that goes against every instinct in your body, is this. Stop. Do not immediately get in your car. Do not sprint toward your kids' school. Stop, breathe, and think for 60 seconds, because a plan executed in the next hour will beat blind panic executed in the next 6 minutes.
Here's what that 60 seconds of thinking needs to produce. A decision tree. Where was each family member supposed to be at this time of day? What's their most likely location right now? What's the predetermined rally point you should have set up months ago, but probably didn't? And if you didn't set one up, what's the most logical place they would go based on your family's habits and conversations? This is where most people realize they've never actually had this conversation. They've never said, if something catastrophic happens and we can't call each other, here's where we meet. So they're guessing. They're trying to read the mind of a panicking spouse or a terrified teenager, and mind reading doesn't work when everyone's operating on fear instead of logic. But here's the thing. Even without a predetermined plan, you can make educated guesses based on what psychologists call default behavior under stress. People go to places that feel safe. Home is the first instinct, which means if you're not at home, there's a decent chance other family members are heading there or will head there. Schools and workplaces are secondary because people assume that's where others will stay put. The mistake is assuming everyone thinks like you do. Your spouse might assume you'll come get them. You might assume they'll head home. Your kid might think you'll pick them up. Without communication, assumptions become the enemy. So here's the first practical method, the rally point system, which you need to set up right now, today, before this ever happens. You need 3 rally points. Primary is home, because it's the most obvious and most family members will default to it. Secondary is a location exactly 1 mile from home in a predetermined direction. Why 1 mile? Because it's walkable for almost anyone, it's close enough to reach on foot even if vehicles are useless, and it's far enough from home to matter if home is compromised, burned, looted, or otherwise unreachable. Most people pick a church, a park, a specific intersection, something with a landmark that's hard to miss. Tertiary rally point is outside the city entirely, usually 10 to 20 miles away, somewhere you could reach on foot over 2 days if you had to. This is the evacuation rally point, the place you go if the city itself is no longer viable. You need all 3 written down, discussed, and rehearsed. Not mentioned once over dinner, rehearsed. Your kids need to be able to recite these locations in their sleep. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. Now let's talk about movement strategy, because once you've identified where you're going, how you get there determines whether you arrive at all. If this blackout happens during the day, roads will be chaos within 30 minutes. Traffic lights are dead, which means intersections become negotiation points. Fender benders turn into shouting matches. Gas stations become flashpoints. If you're going to use a vehicle, you need to move in the first 20 minutes or wait until after dark. Most people don't think about the after dark option because they're terrified of losing daylight. But nighttime movement has massive advantages in a communication blackout. Fewer people on the road, less chaos, more predictability. The downside is visibility, but if you know your city and you've pre-planned your route, nighttime is often safer than the mid-afternoon scramble. If you're moving on foot, the calculus changes. Daylight is safer for walking because you can see threats, avoid hazards, and navigate more easily. But you're also more visible, which means you're a target if things have escalated quickly. This is where knowing your city's topography matters. Are there greenways, trails, railroad tracks, power line corridors? These are the invisible highways that most people forget exist. They're not on Google Maps anymore because your phone is dead. But if you've walked them before, if you've memorized them, they're faster and safer than main roads.
Let's address the school problem, because this is the scenario that keeps parents awake at night. Your kids are at school, you can't call, you can't text, and you have no idea if the school is in lockdown, if it's been evacuated, or if your kids are sitting in a classroom wondering why you haven't shown up. Here's what you need to know about school protocols during disasters. Most schools will not release children unless a parent or designated guardian physically shows up. This is a liability issue, a safety issue, and it's non-negotiable in most districts. Which means if you're across town, your kid is staying put until you get there, or until the school makes the decision to evacuate. Some schools have disaster plans that include keeping kids overnight if parents can't reach them. Some don't. You need to know your school's specific policy right now, before this happens, because it will dictate your entire movement strategy. If your school has a policy of keeping kids safe on site, that buys you time. You don't need to sprint into traffic. You can move strategically. If your school's policy is to release kids to walk home after a certain period, you need to intercept them on that route. If you have multiple kids at multiple schools, you need to prioritize based on age, distance, and capability. Older kids can survive longer without you. Younger kids can't. This is cold math, but it's the math that gets everyone home. Communication alternatives are the next layer. When phones are dead, people forget that there are other ways to leave messages. Physical notes, written instructions, pre-positioned supplies with instructions inside. If you've thought ahead, you've left a laminated card in your kid's backpack that says, "If phones don't work, go to Rally Point 2 and wait for me there. Do not go anywhere else. I will find you." You've done the same for your spouse, maybe tucked into a wallet or a car's glove box. These are one-way communication methods, but they work because they remove ambiguity. Your family member finds the note, follows the instructions, and you've just narrowed the search area from an entire city to one specific location. Another old school method? Chalk marks, graffiti, anything you can use to leave a visible trail. If you pass by your home and you're moving to Rally Point 2, you leave a mark on the front door, something subtle enough that looters won't care, but obvious enough that your family will recognize it. An arrow, an X, a symbol you've agreed on in advance. This is Cold War era spycraft, but it works because it's visual, it's persistent, and it doesn't require technology. Now let's talk about the worst case scenario. You can't find them. You've checked home, you've checked the rally points, you've checked the school, and there's no sign. This is where most people fall apart emotionally, and emotional collapse leads to tactical collapse. You start making desperate moves, knocking on neighbors' doors, driving aimlessly, hoping for a miracle. Here's what you do instead. You expand the search in concentric circles, but you do it systematically. You check the route between their last known location and home. You check hospitals, because if someone's injured, that's where they'll be taken. You check community shelters, because local governments often set these up within hours of a major disaster. You check churches, fire stations, police stations, any place that represents safety and authority. You leave notes at each location, physical descriptions, rally point information, anything that helps someone else connect the dots. This is slow, methodical work, and it feels agonizing when you want to be running. But systematic searching is how missing people get found. Random searching is how you waste days and find nothing. Here's a variable most people don't consider:
Your family might not be trying to reach you. They might be trying to stay safe where they are. If your spouse is at work in a high-rise downtown and the elevators are dead, they might be safer staying put on the 20th floor than trying to navigate darkened stairwells in a panicking crowd. If your teenager is at a friend's house in a safe neighborhood, they might be better off staying there than trying to walk 5 miles through an increasingly unstable city. Communication blackout doesn't just cut off your ability to reach them. It cuts off your ability to tell them to stay put. So part of your pre-planning needs to include rules of thumb. If you're in a safe location, stay there for X hours before attempting to move. If you're in a dangerous location, move towards Rally Point 2 immediately. If you're injured, stay visible and wait for help rather than attempting to travel. These guidelines remove guesswork and give each family member a framework for decision-making when they can't ask for your input. Let's address the psychological component, because finding your family isn't just logistics, it's managing your own fear and theirs. Kids will be terrified, spouses will be terrified, you will be terrified. Fear makes people irrational. It makes them take risks they wouldn't normally take, trust people they shouldn't trust, ignore warning signs that are obvious in hindsight. If you're searching for your family, you need to manage your fear like it's a resource you're rationing. Allow yourself brief moments of panic, then shut it down and return to the plan. If you're the one being searched for, your job is to stay calm, stay visible, and make yourself easy to find. That means staying in well-lit areas during the day, staying near landmarks, staying put once you've reached a rally point. The single biggest mistake people make when separated is continuous movement. They keep searching, keep wandering, keep hoping the next block will be where they find each other. But movement makes you impossible to locate. Staying put, even when it feels counterintuitive, even when every instinct says to keep searching, is often the decision that leads to reunion. Final point, time limits. You need to know when to stop searching a specific location and move to the next. If you've been at Rally Point 2 for 6 hours and nobody's shown up, you need to move to Rally Point 3. If you've searched the school, the route home, and the house and you found nothing, you need to expand to hospitals and shelters. Time limits keep you moving forward instead of spiraling. They force decisions when your brain wants to freeze, and they're based on realistic assessments of travel time, distance, and your family's capabilities. If your spouse can walk 3 miles per hour and they're starting from 10 miles away, you know they won't arrive at the rally point for at least 3.5 hours, probably longer if the city's in chaos. So you wait 4 hours, then you move. If your kid's school is 5 miles away and they're walking, you know they won't make it home in under 2 hours. So you give them free, account for delays, and then you start the search if they haven't arrived.
This is the reality of the communication blackout. It's not romantic. It's not cinematic. It's cold calculation, pre-planning, and emotional discipline under the worst possible circumstances. But here's the truth. Families that have these conversations, that set these rally points, that practice these protocols, they find each other. Families that don't, they spend days searching, and sometimes they never reconnect. The difference isn't luck, it's preparation. So tonight, before you go to bed, have the conversation, set the rally points, write the notes, laminate the cards. Because when the phones die, and they will eventually die, your family's reunion won't depend on technology. It'll depend on whether you thought about this moment before it happened.